So welcome, 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 everybody. We're just going to wait a couple minutes probably to let all of you little chickens gather. Oh my gosh, Leilama! Hi, Leilama! Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Carmen, I see. Oh my God, there's so many fun people here. Kirsten Ernst, Catherine Ernst, sorry, excuse me. Ciao. Hi, everybody.
Hi, hi.
So good. Um, so maybe just a couple more minutes.
What's in Sicily?
So the Double J Sisterhood is in a place called Roccoforte. That's like an hour. It's near Agrigento, the Greek temples, which you guys all need to check out. It's one of these totally it's just much less touristy part of Sicily. And this girl called Irene Forte, she and her sister are hotel owners. They own a lot of hotels in Italy, and they're revamping this one. And she's also done this like holistic skincare line. So we've partnered with them, and we brought in our Gong Temple person that built the Gong Temple in Milan, who lives at the base of Mount Etna. So we're doing sound. I'm leading meditation tomorrow. And then they're taking us all around their property, seeing like all of the wild olives and almonds that are used in the skincare. I mean, it's just been such a heavenly day of just eating and grazing, and it's really, really nice. Now we're having a big Double J dinner party tonight.
Oh my goodness. Nothing like a double J dinner party. That's for sure.
Oh,
You gather incredible people, that is for sure.
well, that's our job. That's our job, is to just be connective. And I think that's, just as like a little preamble here for the sisterhood. Catherine Ernst, who's on the phone here, is lives in Berlin. And she recently just partnered with a friend of ours who's a sound healer. So it's just so fun the way people are just like always coming together and connecting. That's what we're meant to be doing. It's just
Yeah,
sharing and connecting, even in these virtual moments, like right now.
yeah, yeah. And I always say sacred clusters find one another. So it's all those funny little things when you're like, can you believe I ran into this person in this place in this world that I was just talking about 2 days ago and I haven't seen in 10 years? Or all the connective
Totally.
tissues that happen. It's usually a sign
Totally.
you're on the right path. Yeah.
Well, some of you guys already know that, I think a lot of you are already signed up to our sisterhood. That's why you're here. And those of you who are not, please do sign up. It's free on our website because you get invitations to special free online classes like this one that are part of our Sisterhood Academy, as well as all the news and updates of events that are happening and the people that are visiting our Gong Temple in Milan, like dearest Taryn, who came in about, I think it was 2 weeks ago now or 10 days ago, that she blasted through Milan, had a fabulous class in the Gong Temple. And I just loved the pictures of you like working out in the train station, in the park, making it happen wherever. And that kind of energy is something that is truly remarkable, and something that I think people really look to you as a way shower, how you're really cultivating that presence, that connection with the body. And I know that the class has also been, works on many different levels, not just the physical. So today we are talking about shadow and light and how to cultivate and handle both. We're speaking with energy movement master Taryn Toomey. And I just wanted to start, honey, by I think just giving people a little bit of, a lot of people know about the class. They might not know about you personally. And I think a lot of people might be interested in how you got to this. What was your journey to the class, your journey to spirituality? How did this all start?
Oof. This is what my brain does. And thank you, JJ, for having me here with everyone. I want to just start by saying I asked to connect yesterday so we could riff a little bit about what we were going to talk about. And I started saying something and you said, nope, save it for later. And I love that because that is when the truth moves as opposed to some construct of what one is supposed to say. And I've always been like that, a little bit different in the way that I move energy. And it's been more challenging for me to sit down and organize my thinking. But I know when I'm dropped into my body and I connect to my heart and I breathe and I slow down, that information can move through at a different cadence and pacing that allows you to know what you need to do to get into that space. So I think I've always been like that. I've always had a lot of fire since I was growing up. I was getting in trouble in school all the time. I always had to give people hand massages to regulate myself in 5th grade. And it was like all of this kind of movement all the time. And I think just through my own maturity of understanding how to use the elemental forces of fire and spirit and water and earth and all these different uh, elements, that I've learned to take the fire that I have and to direct it into a specific channel. And that's to summarize how I got here. I grew up in a pretty chaotic home. I moved into a bunch of different homes over my childhood. My mom was practicing a form of Japanese Buddhism where she would chant every day Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So that was always in my home, of this like vibrational mantra current. And my father wasn't very accepting of it. So there was always a lot of conflict there of like, you're kind of crazy and you're, I'm not. And so I think I learned a lot by osmosis of understanding how to read energy of somebody that's trying to control versus somebody that's trying to move energy and connect. Uh, Forever and always, I've been somebody that listens to music and moves my body to regulate since I was little. I was really into sports and I've always prayed. I was reading through journals. I've done this thing with my oldest daughter, who's 15. She's been in a little bit of a passage the past 2 years that has been, it will be an important one for her. But when you're in it, speaking of shadow, it makes you slow down and do some different ways of thinking. And we were reading my journals from when I was young, and it was the same stuff of like, oh, the moon is full tonight. And I'm talking about when I was 10 years old. And I was listening to this song and please God, it was always praying, and saying, we'll work more tomorrow at loving myself and giving myself love. And it was always this kind of self-hatred versus like, how do I do it again the next day? And talking to the moon and talking to the cycles of whatever it was in my journal. So it was never, something that I feel like I had a moment that shifted that. It was part of my kind of being. And then in my early 20s, I started spending some time in Peru and sat with grandmother with ayahuasca for the first time. And that was really a space where I learned the power of sitting in a circle in a room or a space with somebody that's anchoring the energy, bringing spirit through, and then allowing people in the room to release in any way that they need to without getting in the middle of their flow. So purging, crying, all of these different ways without going to the person next to you and saying, "Are you okay?" But allowing that person to process. So that was really in reflection. I've considered that to be a really important point in understanding how to move energy and allow people to heal through just allowing them to be with whatever emotion or any feeling is coming up. And then
And
it's been
I'm just going to stop you there. Isn't it just remarkable how few people can tolerate the emotion in themselves or allowing someone else to just be with their emotion?
Yes, it's fascinating to watch because as soon as you put the awareness around that and observe it in your own life and as well as the way that people respond, it feels like it's something that's really built in our DNA from the way that we're conditioned. Of if you're not okay, or you can call it whatever different form of psychological analysis it is, but if you're not okay, I'm not okay, right? A little bit of codependency in there, or I need to feel okay, which means that you can't feel it. Like all of these different exchanges. I've definitely experienced so much through the creation of the class, which has been, I've been moving it through for about, I would say 13 years now, but 11 years with the name of the class. is that people will come to my class, and after you just had this very clear opening and just allowing, and will say, "Are you okay?" Or, and I'm like, so it's just an interesting exchange of how people read what they're experiencing and then either personalize it or need to fix something. And it's given me a lot of tools, because that can get you really spun quickly. And I
Yeah.
think that certain word logos have certain things. Are you okay? Sometimes to somebody that may feel okay or just had a vulnerable opening, might suddenly feel like, is there something wrong with me? Which is my go-to. There's something wrong with me. And that's been
Yeah.
something that I've learned since I was little, that I did something wrong. I can't figure out what it is, but I did it. And I can track into all these different types of parts work that I've done and experiences that have formed my relationship to myself. Big T, little t kind of trauma stuff. And the way that we either continue to tell that story as part of us versus this is something that happened and this is what I learned, or this is how I started to change my relationship with that.
And
Um,
I'm going to just jump in again real quick because what you said about I've done something wrong, I've experienced a lot as well. I'm an epic feeler. I've been that way since I was really young. I had a lot of emotional reactions to many things and was completely shut down by the people around me. Like, this is wrong. You are wrong. Shut up. Go to your room. Stop it now. Blah, 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 blah. And okay, apart from that, what
mhm,
I'm starting to understand now is how much, and I know you know this, rich, fertile ingredients are in that feeling state that makes you and so many other people uncomfortable. And that when we actually get to that place of just honoring it and being with it, that's when all the magic arises. That's when you start connecting to your higher power, your higher self. And the fact that we don't do this, I am convinced, is part of the quote unquote witch wound,
mm,
the
yeah.
wound of the witch.
Mm,
Like, women and our feminine energy has been just completely snuffed out over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And that's what this is. This is like, I've done something wrong. Like, because it caught that witchiness, that intuition, that mysticism, all of that mystery and magic that you hold comes through the feeling senses. And
mhm,
this is my theory, is that like our witch wound comes from today, our inability to feel our feelings comes from all those years of being smashed down, whether it was like burning at the stake as a real witch, or just, you know, the Etruscans or the
yeah.
ancient Romans or whatever it is. There are just so many different iterations of our inherent power being snuffed out by the logos, by the logic, by the masculine. And I'm not saying men, but I'm really talking about the distorted masculine energetic.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, which is
it's,
the picture, right? And if there's somebody that's super connected, it's very scary to people that have control structures set up as, I will do this and this will be the outcome, as opposed to a connection to higher power or understanding we all return to creator in the end. And it's something that I think one has to go through the experience of connecting to what that feels like in themselves, and then it can make sense. And people have different passages or openings into what that is. Some people are a little bit born with that sensory and they cultivate it, or they have people around them that help them cultivate it. Or there's people around that tell you, I think that a lot of people use shame to control. Shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourself. Um, you know, and then there's all this shame. So what do? We lose the connection with the intuition because it's something that scares other people. Therefore, I will move back into my own inner, for me, it's self-hatred, self-loathing, that I've done something wrong. Which to me, if we're talking about light and shadow, being able to be in conversation with the shadow as opposed to conflict. And I think that's a lot of what happens with the word logos that we use, right? I often say that there's this woman, Carissa Schumacher, that I've worked with over the past couple of years. That's a full body channel for Yeshua. And there's a lot of different ways that she has shared blending the shadow with the light. So it doesn't have to be so polarizing as the full moon or the new moon, right? Full
Right.
illumination, all is revealed, seeds in the new moon of like what we then illuminate. And she refers to the shadow as the metronome for our own evolution. Because if you're all light all the time, you'll self-combust and we'll pop out of our
Yeah.
body. But the shadow comes in to slow down your pace. And it's a little bit like what one refers to in the cosmic or astrological world of retrograde periods. So a planet
Yeah.
never goes retrograde. It's just so far away from the Earth that it appears that it's going backwards. But that's the time to say pause and review.
Right.
And then, there's all these words like, oh,
But
Mercury's
why do you think it's so difficult, or how has your own experience been? Because I have fire too, and I know people that have a lot of fire have a really hard time slowing down. So is that just do you think our genetic makeup with the elements and our relationship to the elements? Or do you think it's this conditioning of I'm not producing, I'm not accomplishing, I'm not performing? Like what, and how are you handling that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it's not as straightforward as just one or the other. I think that there's a bit of the way that our DNA is in the field of the environment we grew up in, and it's if, experiences happen to us in our childhood where we did or did not feel safe. So there's probably a combo of the kind of fire that I have. I remember when I first met my boyfriend a year ago, he said, have you always been like this? And it stuck in my head because I was like, what does that mean? And and I try to get him to expand on it. And what we finally come to, like, what feels clear is that I have a lot of fire. I wake up in the morning, I want to get going. It's like I kind of fizzle out toward the end of the day, but I think understanding so I do think some people are born with, even if you think about Ayurvedic medicine and the different doshas and the elemental kind of, some people are much more earth and they need more light to help balance out that. Sometimes you lean into more depression if there's too much earth, or too much fire is anxiety. So there's a lot of
Right.
different ways that I've always like blended these things. I think that a lot of it is fear and control, and doesn't allow people, women specifically, and like you said, it's not necessarily masculine, feminine in terms of gender, but I do think that there's a certain attunement that, and this is not to generalize, but that women have because of that compassion, because of relationship to the moon and to the void periods. Because what is the void? That is where you pluck from infinite possibilities that the mind can't organize and or think about. So understanding that fertility in these periods of I don't know, which is really what a void period is. I don't know what's going to happen. And the understanding that that's what you're in front of. You can either think your way through it,
Yeah.
allow the old stories to inform your mind, and then act from here, or you can say, ah, here's the shadow. Here's my voice that tells me fill in the blank. And I think it's really wise to get into relationship to what that fill in the blank is for each of us. So when it comes up, you've put a little pin in it and you draw a little circle around it, and you're like, oh, that's just this shadow of this
Yeah.
unrealized, So I don't know if that answered your question so directly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about just like becoming, I mean, this sounds so banale, as the Italians say. It's like truly becoming good friends with yourself and recognizing the pattern, like being your own best boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, oh, honey, you're so funny when you do that. You're so silly. You're such a goofball, and like really treating yourself as like someone you're trying to impress. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? When you meet someone for the first time and you're like trying to impress them, you're like really nice. You don't see any flaws whatsoever. We should be treating ourselves that way all the time. And instead, there is this like crazy talk record player that goes on that's been passed on from generation to generation that's just like assaulting ourselves in pure judgment. And I think that it's that criticism and the judgment and the punitive um way in which we regard ourselves that shuts down this entire process of shadow alchemizing properly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The alchemizing is a really, I love that word so much. I feel like that's a lot of what the class does. It's the
Yeah,
embodiment.
let's talk about that. Like, so before we talk about what the class does, how did you give us a little intel? Like, were you just like going like this around your bedroom and like, shaking and like, I love it that the visual was so great that you were giving people hand massages when you were a kid. Like that explains a lot to me. Like that was so visual. But I would love to hear a little bit of like, because there's so many people out there who may have something inside themselves that they want to create and bring forth and be of service. And I think when people hear a story like that, Taryn, about like, did you have doubts? Like what was going on? How did this even happen? It's great to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I still do, and that's why I love the class and the practices that I, not even just the class. Class is really my home base, and I practice it almost every day. The movements, and for whatever reason the methodology works for me, so I love it, and I think it's just it's a way to understand. Okay, so the way that the class started, I had always been into sports, movement, all this kind of like get the energy flushing. I started teaching yoga. I started practicing a lot of yoga. I started then studying yoga, not just as in the asana practice, but the limbs of yoga, and under peeking into meditation and breath work and all these things. And a woman in Peru named Mama Kia had passed away, who was really the embodiment of a mother to me, and I was dealing with some grief from it. So for the first 2 years, I was teaching what was the class in my building. I think people have heard this story if they've ever heard of the class before. And we would just send the money to her children that were now twice orphaned, because she had started a children's home down there where she adopted. So it's not orphans because she'd adopted them, but and that's really how it started. And the core components of it are repetition. So you'll repeat a movement, repeat a movement, repeat a movement, which is funny that you had just done this kind of movement around. Like, was I just, when I first started teaching the class, I was so, talk about conditioned. I was told early on, you can't dance, you can't move, don't do that. And it happened to be by my ex-husband, and he's a lovely man, but it was right when I first met him, and he was 10 years older than me, and I was very insecure. And from that day on, I stopped dancing, moving. It was one of those funny things where I knew that I was kind of awkward and geeky when I would move, but then to have somebody that you really want their opinion to be positive of you or pick you or whatever that is, I just shut down. So the original class was just repetition. You squat on the beat, you close your eyes, and the closing of the eyes allows us, it's probably the opposite of what we're all experiencing, or which a lot of us are experiencing with the screens and the engaging with things around us. So the eyes closed gives you access to scan the inner world. And then the somatic piece of the class to me was always something that grounded me, tracking what it feels like when the top eyelid touches the bottom, when you rub your thumbs over the tips of your fingers, when you expand the lower part of your lung into your rib cage. So tracking that and getting the students into their body through that. And then sound, you're on movement number 25 and your heart is beating. And instead of just saying,
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah.
moving really the underbelly of the doubt, or the crust or the staleness or the sticky, and you're moving it out of the vessel of your body through the orifice of your mouth. And the relationship to sound has always been interesting in class. We hum, we sigh, but it's just a vibrational current. You're either sending out of your body or into your body. So it's like an exfoliation of sorts for the form. And then we
It's
end.
so interesting. I'm going to just jump in another, just because I feel like it's a really important point. There's a lot of reticence for many women to make noise, I've noticed. And what I've learned in my own spiritual and energetic development and consciousness practice, I mean, apart from the moments of just practicing stillness and silence, which are really important, probably the other part that has been as transformative is to really experiment with the sound. And Leilama, who's on this call, has been one of my teachers in this for many years. And we have done just the craziest sounding things. And, I was on a bhakti yoga retreat many years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And on day 5 of singing these devotional chants all day, suddenly this like light language popped out of my mouth. And I was, speaking a form of whatever you can call it, gibberish, you can call it whatever you want. But I mean, it was a whole frequency coming out of my mouth. And we don't understand that how powerful this is. Like, we might go and sit in a sound bath and understand that that's giving us a charge, a raised frequency, and we discount our own ability to be that very gong, to be that crystal bowl, to actually create a vessel of sound within ourselves and to be the creator of it, and how much can dislodge. You can really do powerful things. So I think it's amazing that you have that component in the class. And also, I just really, I really want to encourage people to do this on their own, just like "Umananai shikunda karaya la yura blah, 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 undaraya, blah." It's like it literally stomping your feet, getting it out. It feels so good, and it's like shake it out, shake it out,
Yeah, we
shake it
can
out.
all do it now. Everybody get it moving, get it moving. Come on, arms up. Come on, do it. Here we
Totally. And
go.
this is so, it's so important to normalize this. Like, you're doing it in the class, and I think that you've brought so many women to their voices probably for the first time, Taryn.
Yeah, thank you for all that. I was just listening to you speak and I'm like, wow, JJ, you really have a way with words and articulation of what it is that we're doing in a way that I have not structured that before. Because I view the body as this antenna, which is a similar way to consider it. And if the antenna is at this frequency that's like, come and gossip with me and come, or come and like, oh, I'm that person that is gonna like feed that, that's what you call towards you. And if the vibrational state of your form is clear, we've used a specific, for me in class, when I stand my feet at the front of the room and we open the space, I do it through my series of things. Inhale, final exhale, exhale out the mouth, and then close your eyes and boom, connect. Then what goes on in that hour? The sound is an offering. And I think the offering is a really key component to keep containers healthy. So you're offering up the thing that you don't want to say, that is hurting you or is hurting someone else, or the resentment or the whatever it is. And you're not articulating it in a way where you're speaking to another person and then you click in to their own organization of what they hear and then maybe challenge you. And that's where it's good to know who it is that you're speaking to or who's holding
Yeah,
space.
totally. One thing
Yeah.
I was thinking about with the repetition, I know that's a vital part of your class. And, what I notice about the repetition is that it tends to increase my anger. And I was wondering if that was actually part of its purpose, to get a little bit of fury and fire rising. Because, after like 300, blah, 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 you're like, motherfucker, I just want this to stop. And then you really feel like screaming. So do you feel that the repetition is almost aiding people and getting pissed off and getting kind of in contact with it? Or is it just me?
Yeah, for sure. Because it you're intentionally repeating something to create discomfort. Close the eyes and watch your thoughts around the feeling. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's, I suck, I can't do this. This is like, look at that person next to me, or there's comparison, or there's judgment, or it's like this person is annoying me. And then when
right.
the teacher guides in the way where the truth of the method comes through, which is not, I'm going to tell you what to think and how to feel, and I'm going to preach to you about, and then you leave and you think you feel great. But what it was is you just listened to somebody kind of telling you good words or something. It's more what's coming up, what's coming up, what's coming up.
Yeah.
And invitation to use the sound is to dislodge that of, you use the word angry, whatever the frustration is, bring it up, sit with it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as be in conversation with the shadow or make friends. It's like, oh, it's uncomfortable. And my relationship to this feeling is what? And if we can
Yes.
right? What is it? I don't want to feel that. That's a bad feeling. That's a good feeling. And,
Right.
put it in that channel of, and then I'm going to offer up that old boof just through sound. So I'm now not in conversation with how do you feel about my sound, but I'm just going to say, turn it over,
Let it, yeah. And it's so interesting to observe how each one of us will react very differently to discomfort. Because some people, in the face of discomfort, would like to quit and just give up. Some people like me, when I get uncomfortable, I get angry. It's so embarrassing. I get pissed. I get super mad if I'm like sad, if I'm tired, if I'm weak, I get angry. So it's so interesting that that's my relationship with it, but not everybody does. Like after I started, investigating this, I realized that that's my special talent. Not everybody gets pissed. Other people have different ways of, some people just kind of go offline, they disconnect. So I think what's really important is what you said is we have to get out of the head and into just like moving through it, and using that sound or using um, yeah, it's really the movement.
Yeah. Where do you think the anger comes from?
My anger comes from the inability, like my anger comes from feeling weak at any time. So I feel like the investigation that I've done in this lifetime and many past lifetimes is just the um, relationship with power
Mm.
and the mistrust of a softer, calmer, very invisible power. This is the whole patriarchal mishmash that we've been programmed with. I grew up in a very masculine dominated family, and the most masculine out of all of us was my mother. I had two brothers, a father, and she was the one who was like acted more sort of aggressive and harsh and rigid and controlling, and all of those masculine attributes that we're now really cognizant of being very unhelpful. But at the same time, my mom taught me how to go out and build a business. She was a career woman. My mom was like, "You're not staying home. Like, what are you talking about? Go out." Like, she was always very like, when you run a bank, she was always like talking in these terms. So, however kind of unmatronly, unmotherly, sort of unnurturing she was, she did give me a kick in the pants that I really appreciate. So there's always kind of like that balancing act that we have to do. And yeah, I think it's very beautiful when you can come to that sort of softening and that acceptance of, oh my gosh, I'm in my vulnerable place. I'm in that very quiet place. I'm not moving a lot. I won't be. As you said, you're in the infinite possibility of I don't know. It's a scary place to be, and miracles occur there. It's just that our programming, especially from Western, I want to say civilization, Western cultures, is, anti that. We're
Yeah.
we're deathly afraid, especially in America, of being labeled lazy and someone who's laying on the couch all day and not doing anything. But that's
Yeah.
not what we're talking about when we talk about going into those quiet voidal places. It's a place of sacred reflection and reception.
Mhm.
So it really needs to be treated as such.
Yeah. And practicing the discomfort in class is a direct relationship, in my experience, of how we create awareness around when we feel uncomfortable or a bit of discomfort that has to do with growth and evolution. So that period of the void or the shadow, understanding our relationship with it. And I think what happens is that we throw around these like overused, under embodied terms, and we don't spend the time to really dissect what some of them mean. So shadow, I think, has this negative, like, oh God, I don't want that. But it's, it's it really, there's so much wisdom in that. If we can learn how to see, this is an uncomfortable place for me. What do you have to show me? What do you have
A
to teach?
hundred. 100%. 100%. And that's what we were talking about earlier about the whole like best friends, I'm dating you, new relationship, I want to know you. Like, what do you have to tell me? Like think of how gentle everyone is in the first months of a new relationship, a new love affair, right? Like you're so open and so disponibile, as the Italians say. It's like that's what we want to cultivate, that openness and that curiosity and warmth towards ourselves
Yeah.
in those moments of feebleness.
Yeah.
And one other point I want to make, because I was just at home this weekend over, in Los Angeles for two funerals with family members, and God knows that's the quickest way to like get all of your, ancestral package handed to you for breakfast. And and I really saw how God love them, but my family cannot show up for me when I am having any kind of an emotional experience. They cannot do it. And it's okay because it's not their job to do that. It's my job to show up for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and even hearing you say that, it brings into this other piece that you touched on earlier of like, is it part of how we're born? Is it, the ways that we're taught how to be when we're in these like porous stages of 0 to 7 and all these. There's also an acceptance that I think needs to come in for humans sometimes around some people just don't have the skills. They don't have the skill of language because they haven't explored what it's like to try to describe your inner world so that way you can get your needs met. They haven't had they haven't practiced the tools or whatever it is. So I think that's where this acceptance comes in, where you're not going to change somebody else's behavior. I've also, when you were asking about my kind of path, I also spent a lot of time in 12-step programs, specifically Al-Anon, for a long period of time. And I learned a lot about that. And they talk about higher power in program work, and the ability to say, I'm doing something that is negatively going to impact me, and I'm going to create awareness around it, and I'm going to turn it over and offer it up and then wait for a miracle, right? And then you pay attention to the signs. But I think moving into a family structure like that, that goes into all of the work of that. It's all a mirror, right? Whatever it is that we're.
100%. 100%. And you better believe I wanted to point my finger and be like, they're not doing this. Blah, 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 blah. And then it was so clear. I was like, oh my God, this is so perfect. It's just yet another reminder. Every time I go back, I get reminded, and they are fabulous. I love them. And they're not going to give me what I need emotionally because I need to give me what I need emotionally. And that was my lesson early in life. It may not be your lesson. Like each of us has a different lesson, right? Like mine was, these people were shaming me for having my emotions. And so, like, the whole kind of karmic battle was like, oh my God, I feel so bad over having my emotions. And so, my whole percorso, as the Italians say, the journey was coming to acceptance myself of it. Like, it's okay. And it also doesn't matter what they think about my emotional experience. So it was
Yeah.
like three layers, let's say. And it was just, it's the onion. You have to unpeel another layer of this. Every year we're on the planet, we get
And it's
another layer.
and then it's even your ability to have the skills and the tools to reflect on what that was, as opposed to get stuck back in the muck and try to change something. And then we become exhausted because you're just
Totally.
using your energy and you're spewing it into the spigot of, control and all these different ways. And meanwhile, we're just activating somebody else's inner world and we have no idea what it's activating. They might not even know. So, that ability to step away and then to reflect on the fact that there was a bit of transcendence there of like moving up and over a problem, as opposed to thinking you're just going to continue to use the same thing and push through with the same, but it's,
Yeah.
moving up into the next layer of understanding how much space it gives you after you're not now stuck in the thing, and now you have all this extra space
Mm,
in yourself to create, and that's the, great creators of femininity, and not femininity but really actually female that have wombs. They say that males also have auras, wombs in a masculine or a gender of a male. And I think that that ability to understand that the creation is not, oh, I'm going to create a piece of art, but it's creative thinking. It's thinking outside the box. It's creating enough space for you to hear the information that moves through. That is,
Totally.
I'm going to go do that because that person's doing it. And
Yeah.
that looks good and they look happy. But like, what actually fulfills me, you know?
Totally. And that's what I really think is great about your creation. It has your unique energetic thumbprint on it. And it's truly yours and came from a place of both desire, need, and joy. You know, the threesome, all of that. And Taryn, I took some notes earlier. I just want to like summarize this for everyone who's on. Taryn mentioned that she also uses prayer in addition to movement, moon talk, ayahuasca, and parts work. So we've talked about this a little bit on some of my other sisterhood academies. The parts is the internal family system, I assume you're talking about. Is that right, Taryn?
Yep. A style of
And
it. A woman that does
yeah, it's
ADEP, which is
it's
similar.
so helpful, isn't it? Like, have you found that to be really great?
It's been one of the biggest discoveries I have found in my entire life because it's very hard to sometimes differentiate, oh, that's shadow, that's just a part of me that's telling me that I'm doing something wrong, versus this is my 9-year-old self that is now online and running the show and
Totally.
wants so and has something to say, and the adult's no longer in the room making the choices. How you can really remother, at least which is what I do, that part of me that needs like, come sit in my lap, let's have
Yeah,
a conversation, and let
yeah.
me show you, whatever series of words that part needs, it needed to hear. And ayahuasca, I have not sat in ceremony since for almost 17 years now, but I went
Oh,
deep.
wow.
Yeah, I went deep into specifically ayahuasca for a bunch of years, but it was something that I would it was very important for me. I don't know if it was my disposition or where I was in my own kind of karmic journey, but I do know that my mom's side of the family is still very unwell. And I think that there was something that I know it was something because I remember it when I was young, and people call it a call, but there was something about it's not going to continue like this. And I was listening to this Enya song and I said, okay, I'll do it. If somebody heard me say that, I wouldn't share a lot. I didn't share when I was going and sitting in ceremony. I wouldn't come back to the States and talk about it. I would just keep it really sacred because I knew that it was something that was moving it in a cellular, felt historical way, that needed to happen in order for me to then birth two children, two girls. And I remember when I was sitting right before my first ceremony, I had my cocoa leaves read, and this woman, I actually just picked up a journal last night where I wrote this, which is crazy because I was talking about it the other day and I didn't even know I wrote it in a journal. She pulled out the cocoa leaves and said, there's this little leaf that fell out, and she said, there's a girl waiting to come through, but you need to get yourself clear first. And I said, I know, her name is Scarlett, which ended up being my first daughter's name. This is years before I was even married. So certainly wasn't thinking about having children yet. And it makes so much sense because when people ask me, or like on the class website for the teachers' bios, it's like, what was your first class experience? And they're like, oh, I was here and here. And I said, mine was giving birth. It just was, how do you feel into sensation of the body? Allow yourself to breathe through it. It releases, it gets more intense, it releases. And eventually you're pushing a child out, bringing creation into this world. It should be an intense experience of understanding your own power and ability. And that was my first class experience because boom, then it's over and a new cycle begins, right? And it's what we do in the process of transformation that allows that new cycle to have a different type of seeds and root to it. But that's so ayahuasca and then IFS work, which is not, it's not labeled that in the form that I do, but I think super important to differentiate between, is this shadow or is this a young part, you know? Sorry.
Um, it's been very helpful for me too, so I'm so glad to hear that. Um, the other thing that I would just add to that list, all of which I'm completely in agreement with, was something that's helped me a lot is Vipassana. Have you done any 10-day retreats or any Vipassana work?
I have not. They've been in my field forever, and I'm so resistant. It's not even funny.
I can imagine. Signora, un attimo per piacere. Sì, grazie mille. The nice person. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's truly it's exactly what you're doing in the class without moving and without sound. So it's kind of challenging, but it really hooks you up to a very deep consciousness. And yeah, I'm gonna do a 10-day this August, and I was just on a all day one a couple months ago, like an 8-hour Vipassana. It's really intense. I mean, those first hours are really, really intense. But again, it's just conditioning yourself to becoming comfortable with what's uncomfortable. And I
Yeah.
think that that's like our, that's our kind of great, that's our great goal here on planet Earth.
Yeah. No, I think it's brilliant, brilliant. I know a lot of people that have done 10-day Vipassanas, and it feels like it's a cleaning of the psyche in a way that is very powerful and important. There's so many things that I wanted to do. Honestly, having children has really messed up the flow of the ability. I haven't taken a vacation too long, but I say that because it's like, where do you place like a Vipassana or, different types of therapy or movement and all of that? And I think sometimes creating a roadmap for yourself and understanding how to balance these things, Vipassana would probably
Yeah.
be important for me in that silence, but yeah, thank you.
Sweetie, we have probably about like 15 more minutes here. Do you want, I think I saw a couple people ask questions in the chat, which I don't know how to access right now because I'm on an iPhone, but would you like to open this up to questions, or did you want
Yeah,
to move into a heart balm meditation, or we want to do that as the adjunct add-on? What's your feeling right now? How are you
I would
feeling?
love to ask anybody if they have questions. I don't get to sit in this type of forum that often.
Yeah. So just unmute yourselves, you guys, and jump on and ask any kind of question you might want.
I can read through if it was somebody going. I don't want to interrupt if they were. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I love your practice. The first class that I did was in 2020 online, during the pandemic, and I did your class first and started crying, and a lot of emotion came through, and it wasn't the workout, the regular workout that I expected it to be. So your workout is so incredibly special. And when you mentioned when you were younger, that you had this relationship to the moon, I find it remarkable. I definitely did not have a relationship to the moon when I was younger. Where do you think that connection came from? Like, you come across to me as someone, even through the chaos, had an understanding of who you were. Is that accurate?
It's an interesting question. I think it is constant work in progress, especially through the creation and the sharing of the class, because it's very easy to get warped with people's opinions of what they think you are or who you are based on their own perception and projections. And how do you find your center in that? It's challenging. The class was never supposed to be something that was out there in the way that it is, but it obviously was supposed to be. But in terms of my own thinking around it, I've always felt very much like I should have grown up in the 70s Woodstock. Like that was always my kind of style in my relationship. I've always loved the earth. I've always needed to get in bodies of water. It's like cycles of the moon I found fascinating. I remember in 5th grade, I was in an astronomy class, and I was like, I'm going to the moon. So there's definitely a resonance with all of that. And I do think that that is important, that there's different types of resonance and dissonance that we have with certain energies. Some people are much more engineering in the mind, not that one has to be without the other, but I've always felt a lot of energy around me and through me, as opposed to just what goes on in my inner world. And because of that porousness, I think it takes a lot of, I know who I am in terms of that. At the end of the day, I put my head down and it's between me and God. Like, I know that's who I am in terms of the way that I operate. But I still think I have some work to do around, I know I do, around surrounding myself with people that perpetuate my core wounds of there's something wrong with you and you're crazy and you need to be put in the corner, versus seeing when that is something that is an old pattern, and then sorting out how I can have a very clear conversation about what does and does not work for me, and then move on from that. So through those iterations of being able to do that in my life, disconnecting from relationships that are feeding the wrong part of me, that, you know, and I've started to realize and sense who I am from the way, in terms of that at the end of the day, I have a very strong tether to my center, and I can really swing out to the sides, but I always pull myself back. And I know that about myself. But I definitely am a little bit of a wild, feisty kind of spirit. And with that comes a lot of that, like, oh, I've done something wrong again. But I think it's all part of the process, right? It's like getting to know yourself and then understanding how we're unconsciously perpetuating some of the things that we've not realized yet because we haven't realized them yet. And how do we bring our practices into a place where we can realign with our heart? I hope that answered that question.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm teaching, I feel more like myself than I ever am when I step into a room and I'm moving energy, in a way that I know that I'm holding that space as something, that's important for me to be clear about what I'm doing, not telling people what to do, but allowing myself to anchor the energy. And also not embodying other people's energy. And people would say, like, oh, when you're getting it out and they're throwing it to the front of the room, I'm not saying like, give it to me. I'm saying offer it up. So there's certain ways in which I'm sure that it gets porous, and my thinking starts to be that of maybe somebody else's feeling about something. And that's when I usually take it to the earth and have to get in the water and put my feet in the grass and, you know, drain it. But
Purge.
yeah. I think it's important. Yeah.
I have a question. It's a quick one. How do you handle criticism?
Criticism, I feel like I've gotten much clearer that when people want to criticize, especially if it's through a screen or something that doesn't even have to do with human contact, that it's really not about me. And I spend, you know, less time now being concerned about less time. Doesn't mean that I'm not, you know, immune to it. My friend Amy Swift once gave me this mantra: immune to praise, immune to criticism, immune to praise, immune to criticism. So I do think mantra work is very helpful when you are in a state where somebody's kind of, or your own thing is organizing itself. I think it's very easy to say it's not about me, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't impact, right? Which is why I think that we all should be responsible for the words that come out of our mouth, because we could be impacting people in ways that we don't know, take from their own peace and space. But, you know, I don't think anybody really has that figured out. I think maybe they do, or maybe they have a different structure of self-confidence or ability to disregard another's point of view. But I've always been a bit naked in the heart and vulnerable in the way that I share. And I think that opens me up into criticism of people wanting to tell me what they think about me, or what they, you know, and I think that's all part of the process. I think mantra work is really helpful with that type of energy, though, sometimes, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. We have some questions in the chat here. Want me to read them?
Yeah.
Dr. Ruth, how do you say that? Ruthier? Ruthier? Is that how you say that? Is it the feeling of being weak, or is it the feeling of being helpless for a moment that makes you get aggressive? I think that's for you, JJ.
Totally. Both.
Yeah.
I would say both.
Yeah. Do we use
Eh,
current? Yep, keep going.
no, it's okay. Keep going. Next question. Feel like we went into that
Yeah,
enough.
man, for a while. Do we use current situations to create upheaval for shadows we carry from the past, or do we revisit the past to move through those shadows? That's an interesting question, because it's that idea of, do we bring calm to chaos, or chaos to calm, just to put it into a different way, to know our own tendencies around that. I think that if we're somebody that brings chaos to calm, that likely has something to do with some parts work of not being very accustomed to the feeling of peace, or understanding how that feels. So there's chaos, which could very much be shadow, right? The unresolved part of ourself that is still informing the current present day situation. And I think we revisit to move past those shadows for sure. It's that thing that it will keep coming up until the lesson has been learned and embodied. Chris,
100%.
yeah.
I mean, this entire lifetime is here to help you embody your truest, most authentic self that is aligned with your soul, with your higher self, with your soul's purpose, etc. So anytime you find yourself like banging your head against the wall over and over again, or in repetitive cycles or problems, or just like, why is this happening? It's happening for you, not to you. And even though, I mean, I can say that so easily right here, but of course, when it's happening to us, we don't want to look at it that way. But it really, really helps if you can, after you've done the class or any one of your, numerous things to sort of let the energy move through you in your moment of calm, go back and see, as if it were happening to someone else, what is the lesson here?
Mhm. Yeah,
What
and
is someone trying to get my attention? What needs to be heard, seen, felt, known?
Mhm. And that to me is where it's, if you ask that question and your brain tries to organize the answer, then you're in your brain. So it requires a certain amount of patience, which is different than waiting, right? Patience is, I know that the alignment of this will show up when it is time to show up, as opposed to like, okay, well, I'm waiting for that thing that I prayed for to come up. And it's like there's an arrogance in that, in a way. So the idea of, I'm in it, I'm going to move into my practices and move some of the energy out that's frustrated, or that's going to like burn the thing down in an unhealthy way. Because sometimes you do have to burn the things down to recreate. And the ability to be aware of when to use those practices, sound, movement, taking space from a situation so you can then reflect, I think is important. We just get so busy, like doing, next.
Yeah.
But even looking back at my journals right now, it's wild. I would have never, I'm so grateful that I wrote them, because talk about reflection, it's okay, wait, this is not some new thing that I've been feeling. I've been
Yeah,
feeling this for my lifetime.
totally.
Yeah.
And then just having a lot of mercy and tenderness for that very fact that, you know what? It's been going on a long time. And no, it's not over, but yes, you have greatly improved.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's hard and it sucks and I feel shitty and I don't want to feel this way. But instead, I'm going to feel this way, because then it gives relativity to the joy, right? It's
Mm,
literally love and grief. There is no grief if there was not once love. And the deeper the love, the longer the grief. And we can talk about love and grief for so long, because I'm sure anybody that's lost a human or an animal or anything in their life that they identified with, and they felt as if made up their ego structure of your placement in the world, letting those stories go is really part of the grief. It's almost like you think that somebody has to leave their body in order to feel grief, but it's the identity of a story that gave you a sense of who you were that sometimes you're letting go, right? Something that you believed was your future or this was supposed to happen. That's also the grief. And so
Yeah.
light and shadow, love and grief, it's all the same, you know?
So does anyone else have any last question? I think we can take one more if anyone
I have a
wants to.
question.
Yeah, jump
I
on.
have a breath work question. So I can just say, I mean, I've been doing the class for a really long time. I use it for, it's helped me so much. And I feel like it grows with me. Like I'll be thinking I need to do something and all of a sudden Taryn's like, I do breath work, once a month now. But I started doing the breath work classes and I really struggle with it. And I remember Caleb saying like you could lose feeling in your hands and your feet and it could be and I thought that feels dramatic to me, but then that happened to me during the breath work. I felt like I was losing feeling and so I wonder if there's like any tips for people who are starting out or how to really bring it into your life and utilize it, I guess, would be my question around breath work.
Yeah, that's for me. Yeah, obviously. I know JJ could probably talk to it as well. So there's so many different styles and forms of breath work. I think you're specifically talking about the rhythmic. It's more like a holotropic that Caleb does. Not labeled that, but that's the style of it, which is a very activating breath. I use that type of breath work when I need to get a good sweep underneath the dust bunnies under the bed. I think anytime I'm stuck in a little something, I think finding a good facilitator to really guide you through is super important if you're starting. I've definitely been in breathwork sessions where the facilitator like opens up the space and then just kind of like doesn't say anything and thinks that everybody's got it in them, but you really need somebody to help you understand what's happening without injecting too much, of how to do it. I think as it pertains to that particular kind of breath work, I would be consistent about it. If you want to do once a month, once every other 2 weeks, and then keep a little journal after of like your experience each time, if something shifted or not, that power of reflection again, because it does it gets easier to drop in. And then sometimes you'll have been doing breath work or for me for a while, and then I'll go into a session and it's like impossible. Generally, when I feel that, when something's just really crusty and really stuck or I'm really resistant, that's when I try to stay even longer because that's that little pocket of unrealized that comes up. And I think if people start breath work later in life, it's just a little bit of a steeper slope to climb, but consistency is important and facilitation, I think, is super important as pertains to breath work, at least, and most everything. But
Yeah, and keep trying different teachers and facilitators until you find one that feels really good to you. Use your body as the best barometer and the best guidebook. Your body will give you your belly, your womb. You will know inside your body if you vibe with someone. Anytime you get the heebie-jeebies from anyone, it's a strong, hard no, and you should just walk away from any energetic practice, teacher, spiritual guide, anyone. One thing I will say, I love it when I lose feeling in my hands and feet. Then the lightning bolts start going, and I feel like I'm hooked up to like an electric voltage, and I've got like massive. I mean, I think it's kind of sensational. It's like a really remarkable contact with pranic energy, and just to feel the force of it, it feels very. Invasions of the third kind or whatever that movie was, but like I like those kind of alien feelings in the body. It's been like a super opening. And the first time I ever did holotropic breath work, I like popped out of the body and encountered my father, who I hadn't, who had died 20 years prior. And it was just and it's because I went that deep and I released so much. And this experience with my father was more real to me than talking on this Zoom call right now. I mean, it was so just all body encounter, and there's some really cool things you can do in that state. It's an altered state. It's there's a lot that can happen, a lot of healing, a lot of self-mastery. So I would just encourage you to keep trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you said, JJ, I think is super important. If you get the heebie-jeebies from anybody you're working with and there's not a resonance, there's no need to explain. You can just remove.
You just haul ass. You just get out of there.
Yeah,
You
I've
don't
been
need
in
to.
experiences like that before, and I've gotten really sick from them. So a lot of information in that type of experience. But I do think that so holotropic, specifically psychedelic breath work, it is bringing you into these other higher dimensional states. If like what JJ is saying, so somebody that's facilitating it to say like this is the normal, keep breathing, like understand that you can come in and out as you will, so you can feel safe with whatever's going on, because they're very bizarre sensations from how we normally move through the world. So what JJ is saying, like a relationship with that sensation of like, oh, here's a pocket of something, as opposed to like, oh God, there's something wrong, it's intentional to stir it up. But I love that breath work. I'm the same. I've gone crazy spaces.
Me too. And it's really uncomfortable for like the first 15 minutes. Every time I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't like this. I don't like this. And then suddenly, boom. Then my hands go numb. I'm like, oh, I like that.
It's the thing. It's
Anyway, you guys, I have to go to a dinner that I'm hosting right now. I've been getting dressed for the last like 5 minutes that we've been on this call. Apologies for anyone who has been watching this transformation. But Taryn, Toomey, you are a rock star and a solid soul sister. I cannot thank you enough. This has been beautiful, and we will send this recording out to you guys, as well as I think, Taryn, with a little video you wanted to add on.
Yep, we'll package that up and get it off for everyone.
Cool. So look for that in your emails. And it's been so amazing having all of you guys. Thank you so much. Really
Nice.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, JJ, for inviting me in.
Of course. We love you, and long live the sisterhood.
Yeah.
Aho.
Aho.
Ciao. Ciao tutti.